Ron.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting tonight, March 6, 2014. And our first order of business tonight will be a public hearing. And first public hearing will be amendment to section 405.050, definitions and interpretation. Mr. Hamp, if you'd like to bring us up to speed.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
First item we have is a text amendment to section 405.050, definitions and interpretation, ADM-66A. And basically, during the February 6, 2014 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, discussion regarding the proposed text amendment request to Appendix A, ADM-66, was tabled. And the Planning and Zoning Commission requested adding a definition for transitional living to be included in the city's municipal code. And I have for you in your packet a proposed definition for transitional living. I'd also like to ask that part of the permanent public record is the municipal code by reference, the public hearing notices, and my P&Z report.
Any questions at this time? Anyone else here like to speak on behalf of that tonight? Step to the podium and state your name.
Hi, I'm Kathy Pritchett. I'm the owner of Step Up Transitional Living Program. And I just had a question on the proposed language. There are just two areas that I wanted to be sure would fit us. The first one being where it says excluding substance abuse, counseling, and treatment. We don't do any counseling or treatment as far as the program goes, but there may be youth that are in the program that attend that kind of treatment. So I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't and it actually isn't really treatment when it's kind of follow up from they may have been in previous treatment when they come to our program. So we continue doing counseling and therapy, and that might be part of it. So I'm not sure if that counselors that see our kids do come on site. They're not our employees. They're therapists in the community that come in. So it's not actually us doing treatment. It's an hour a week. They're required to see a therapist an hour a week, and each one is going to do it for different reasons.
Well, then I'd like to ask, is that something that is coordinated by you and by the Step Up program?
Correct. Yes. We use 3 different therapists that work with our kids. So yes. But they're not.
And you said counseling though, but this
it's
one.
Really it's counseling, and it's like I said, it's for all different reasons. It's something that we just require because when the kids come, they come with varied backgrounds. If they come with a background where there was substance abuse, then we make that part of the counseling. It's just part of what we do. But when they come to us, like they may have had treatment in their past where they've been with Pathways or behavioral health programs, but we do follow up on it or continue keeping them on the right path. We also do up at AverTest, we do random drug tests on all our kids, whether they have drug history or not. It's just a program policy.
I'd like to.
Okay, Mr. Hamp, can you speak?
I would like to say that in reviewing this definition with the city attorney, it was a specific request that the residential structure specifically excluding substance abuse counseling and treatment at that site. So I don't know if that'd be something they could do off-site where you could still reach your goals, but it was not to have that part of that, so that facility does not become a treatment center.
And I totally understand the reason for it, and very much on that page. So that's the solution. If we have one that we feel like does need that, it can just be done off-site. Again, we don't take kids that are at any point where they need treatment. I guess it's your definition of treatment. But we do take kids that may have it in their past. So we don't like to just stop talking about it with them. We want them to continue on. But yeah, we could do that. That's very simple.
But you said a requirement of living in the facilities that they have to attend this counseling? Okay.
Yeah, and it just gives them a forum it gives them somebody to talk to. It's, they come, the therapist generally will come, and they will take them to the park or take them somewhere. Sometimes they do it on site, and it just gives them somebody to talk to, and they generally need it.
Who wrote these rules that you have?
In the booklet,
Well, you have these restrictions that you don't take certain types of, who wrote those? I mean, did you write those, or, I mean, it's
I'm not
somebody...
sure which ones you're talking
Well,
about.
all the requirements.
They all came from either I wrote them ultimately. Some of them I had to go by the guidelines of my contract with Missouri Alliance. So they have certain stipulations in my contract with them. But most of them came from me.
So if we do this would be for this group and any other group that wanted to come in, and we don't know, so each person would write their own requirements and rules and regulations? Is that what you're saying to me?
Well, if somebody else had a transitional living program, it would be whatever they deemed their program to be, yes, correct. This that you're looking in front of you, I gave initial verbiage to Jack, and then he took it from there, and then I guess the city attorney finally wrote it. So, and he wrote it more towards, in general, not just our program.
Right.
And I, like I said, I understand we don't want drug rehab treatment centers there, and that's not what we are. But I wanted to be very clear that, these are teenagers, and they do come with histories. And they do, not all of them, but some of them have histories, and some of them have been through treatment programs. So we always continue to follow up, just as if they come with physical abuse in their history. We follow up on that as well.
In the guidelines, it says 20 years of age or less. What's the lowest?
16 is the youngest. We hesitate at 16, but we've taken 16. We have one 16-year-old right now. It just depends on their maturity level and what their history is, where they've been, and if we feel like they can work the program.
You said last time that you had a young girl that was there that you took in, but she wasn't wasn't a ward of the court or anything?
She was not in
So
foster
how do you
care.
regulate that? Because that was a concern of mine, that the parents did not know she was coming, did not approve of her coming, and so that would be a concern that I would have.
Yeah, it's something that I don't do a lot of, and it does create some complications. With her, it's been a year and a half. She's doing really well. She lives in her own apartment now. She's going to Lindenwood University, and unfortunately, her adoptive parents don't want anything to do with her, and it didn't go well. But she was of age. We had our own contract, her and I, and I pretty much let her live there, so she had a place to live.
So she was over 18?
No, she was 17.
17. Is that age of consent at that point? I don't know.
Yes.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, before I took her in, I called Officer Weber at the police department, and I asked him. I called Children's Division. Jenny O'Keefe, talked with her. Jenny O'Keefe went out and spoke with the adoptive parents to see if there was any way, any kind of reconciliation, if she could work with them. They refused. I called the parents and said, would you want to sit down and meet? And they just They didn't want anything to do with it.
But would you accept someone under age 17?
Under age
With
17.
the parents was not in
If the
agreement?
no, if the parents weren't in agreement, I couldn't legally do it. And I wouldn't do it. I have an 18-year-old there now who is not in foster care, but her mother signed the papers and gave me legal
Okay.
care for her, but no, under 17, I couldn't do it. And then the other thing that I just wanted to question, the last paragraph where it says that these facilities are for individuals 20 years or age or less. Our residents are all 20 years or less. However, staff wouldn't be. And the way it's worded, I just wanted to be sure, like I live on site, so I live there. Someday, I may have another staff on site living there. We may build another building, so I just wanted to be sure that that would not pertain to the staff.
Does that need to be reworded, Jack, do you think?
I think you can easily add excluding staff. The sentence before sort of states that it's for helping, the purpose is for assisting young adults in the transition to independent living. And I'm sure you can put at the end of that sentence, 20 years of age or less, excluding staff.
And the attorney was aware of all this issue of the kids have to be in counseling to be in their program when you wrote this, and
I wrote this definition and
Okay.
reviewed it with Chris, and it was part of what Kathy sent me, part of what I searched on the internet, and like she'd stated, we tried to come up with a definition that would fit an overall for the city, not write a definition for her specific business that she's running. It had to be,
Right.
so it'd be one definition for the future, that if they fall within this category, it would be a clear guideline what would allow that.
but Mr. Gravel thought that that definition would be exclude.
He specifically said that we need to include excluding substance abuse counseling and treatment. Yes, sir.
Okay. And the reason I asked, I'd just be concerned if somebody decided they're gonna open up a home like this, and then the purpose of it is to give kids a place to live while they're attending group. I mean, are we creating a loophole? Or doesn't sound like it, but I guess Chris
I can sure
was comfortable with it.
I can sure present your question to Chris and get a definite answer for you. But I think his main fear was that someone wouldn't come in and say it's going to be a transitional living facility, and then in reality become a treatment center.
Yeah, that's my concern.
And that's why I asked Kathy if, in her case, I don't know if they could do it in town, if it would be close, or where she would have to go to give off-site counseling, where the needs of the children would still be met, but it's not taking place inside of the buildings out there.
And just to clarify on that as well, while it's policy of the program, that came from foster kids, they're required, they have to have a therapist. That's part of their family support team. So that's kind of where it came from in the program. Most of them are required to have it weekly, but some of them have it every other week. It depends on their case. And just also to make it clear, and maybe I'm just being too technical with it, we don't have anybody in the program that has drug counseling and therapy weekly. We have everybody in the program that sees a counselor, and during the course of conversation, they may touch on past drug use, but they're not actually in treatment or therapy in the program. So I don't know if that clarifies it a little bit more.
Just from my own knowledge, so the transitional living facilities, how many of them are there, say, in like Missouri or?
I don't know the answer to that. If I just had to take a wild guess, there are I can tell you there are none that are really structured exactly like ours or mine. They're most of the transitional living programs, the kids have apartments. They go, the owners or staff goes in and checks on them once every 3 days, and they collect the checks. There's not a lot of structure like this. And the other type of transitional living, there's staff living in the facility. Gosh, if I had to guess, maybe 80, and that's just a guess. I've never
No, it's
asked the
just
question.
asking because the likelihood of having another transitional facility coming here in the Warren.
It's pretty small. I get a lot of, when I go to trainings, I get a lot of questions from people that are like, well, I'm a foster parent. I could just add more kids and get more money and do this. So how easy is it? It's not real easy to start. I mean, I have a 10-year track record as a foster parent. Somebody introduced me into it. Originally, I didn't own it. And the owner of that company had a long history with Missouri Alliance. You have to, you open up your whole personal life. It's not an easy thing to do. So I don't know that it's possible somebody could try to do it, but.
Are you regulated by state? Are there state regulations and?
I am. Children's Division had to come out and do an initial assessment just to approve the layout. And then Missouri Alliance, who is a contractor to Children's Division, I have regulations I have to follow, and I have every caseworker is in there every week.
And you said you live on site, so there is constant monitoring of what takes place on the facility?
Yes. I live on site.
That's always a concern of mine, that we're talking about transition, and it scares me that we just turn kids loose because...
It's very scary. It is, and it's sad, but
Yeah.
it's a reality. These kids don't have,
Any
if we don't do
structure.
it now,
Sure.
they're gonna get out of care and literally be sitting on the steps of the courthouse, and they don't know how to write a check. They don't even never had an account, don't know how to cook, don't know where to go live, have no transportation, and they just, I'll just go sell drugs because I can get money that way, or worse. So it's a reality.
Right. And my concern, because out of respect, I respect that a great deal, and there are very much needs for programs like this. I just didn't know what the oversight on a project like this is, and if it turns out that it's going south, where does someone step in and say, hey, this is going south, we need to...
Is
it law enforcement, or is it state agency?
Right. If law enforcement came out there, we in the two years we've been in business, law enforcement has come out by my request.
Right.
I've called. We've never had law enforcement called on us. Caseworkers are in there once a week, like I said, for each resident, and then each foster child has a whole team. So we do family support team meetings once a month. So the team I have to do reports. So while they're not physically, the caseworkers are physically there once a week, the rest of the team is in their respective counties. But we do meetings and report their progress, what they're doing, what's going on.
And just to clarify one more time, everybody's under agreement that this excludes substance abuse counseling and treatment on site, and if something like that would happen, that would nullify the program. They would be followed outside the...
This, the way it's written now, would not require on-site, that the director be on-site. They could have a housing with just the kids, the way this is written?
That's true. It doesn't
For
say
this
that.
definition, yes. But I believe the next stage of this is the original request to change the Appendix A, where it would be a conditional use, where you'd be able to have that information. You could put
Put
that
that in.
requirement in at that time.
Yeah.
This was just trying to give a
Definition
definition.
of that.
Because there was no existing full
Right.
definition of what her program is. It was a unique item that our code did not have.
Would there be anything wrong with putting it in this part? Or do we want not make that
We can't do that here at the public hearing, but we can talk
Tell me
about
when
that.
we talk
right?
about- okay.
We can discuss that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have a question about, at this time for the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Deach.
What, do you have any kind of a relationship with the school district? Or are you similar like to Joe's house in Maplewood, or do you have anything like that?
A relationship, I'm not sure if you mean a formal relationship. I am up, we know the school district very well. We're registering enrolling kids and disenrolling kids. We're very, they know who we are, we know who they are. We work with them very closely. We work with the alternative school very closely. And we have a very good relationship with them. I know the counselors very well and the principals and it's what helps, really what makes the program work. We've had kids that come in and they've been to so many different schools that just getting their school records together is next to impossible. And the ladies up in the registrar's office just dig right in and they make phone calls and they've put together transcripts that they've found credits that kids would have never gotten credit for. So they do a great job.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you, Ms. Bridget. We'll call you back up if we need some questions later. Thank you. Anybody else to speak on behalf of that or against that at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next part of the agenda, which will be public hearing on amendment to Appendix A. Mr. Hampton, you want to bring us up to date on that?
Yes. Once again, I'd like to ask that part of the public hearing record be the municipal code by reference. The public hearing notice in my P&Z report. On January 29, 2014, a request was filed for a text amendment approval to Appendix A to change the zoning grid to allow RV parks and campgrounds as a permitted or conditional use within the C3 zoning district. This is text amendment request 80M-67.
Record? I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Okay. Is there any public comments on this? Sir, you want to step to the podium, state your name?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having us here. I'm Don Horner. I'm one of the trustees for the Warrenton Elks Lodge, and we're the ones that submitted this amendment request. The reason being is because there is no RV parking or camping allowed within the city, and what drove this whole thing was last year in October, we had visiting elks coming into our community, or one visiting elk come into our community and asked to park on our facility out here on Veterans Memorial Parkway, where we've been for the last 15 years, which incidentally we've been in this community for 30 years. We celebrated our 30-year anniversary last summer. As in the past, we allowed them to do so, and later in that day, one of our police officers come by and said they could not be plugged in to our facility. So that was our first warning shot, if you will, that is not allowed in the city. So we wanted to try to get that changed to where we could allow RV parking and camping. I can assure you that we are not interested in opening a commercial RV park or campground on our property there at on Veterans Memorial Parkway. We just want to be able to accommodate visiting members of the Elks throughout the United States, and we've had many of them over the 15 years that we've been there come in, and I don't remember anybody staying over 2 nights at our facility, and it's just for a 110 plug-in. We supply no water or no sewer, and we have no intention to, because for us to do that would be, quite frankly, cost prohibitive, and we don't want to turn this into a commercial RV park. And we have other ordinances in place, because I was on that side of the board for for 10 years, and I know you can't have outside burning after dark and things like that, and most people, when you go to an RV park, want to have an outside fire pit and all that. So we just want to be able to accommodate visiting Elks members and their guests on a 1 or 2 day at a time basis. No long-term parking whatsoever. Like I say, no water or sewer thing, just a 110 plug-in. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mr. Owner. We'll have questions at the open meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody, any other public comments on this amendment? Hearing none, we'll close our public hearings for this evening and open up our planning and zoning meeting. First order of business will be the minutes from the February 6th meeting.
I do have a question. We got this, I think this updated page, 4 minutes, is that what that is? It's not
It
an
was-
updated page with minutes?
It was part of,
Or is this just provided for the continuing discussion of the ADM 66?
for the ADMs, it was included in ADM 66A. It did not get attached to ADM 66, so I just wanted to make sure you all had that as
Okay.
part of the record.
So this isn't a revision of the
No,
minutes?
and
Okay.
you have a copy of it that was included in 66A,
Okay.
just not in 66.
Okay.
So I just wanted to be part of the permanent record that
Thank you.
everybody received it.
All right. I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Dickey, to approve the minutes as submitted. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Jurgenmeier?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Kohler?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen?
Abstain.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Abstain, I was absent.
Mr. Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 with 3 abstentions. Move on to the next order of business will be the mud bog and motocross. Mr. Ham?
It's a special event permit application, SCP-5, approval request for the Warrenton bands, Mud Bog and Motocross, May the 10th, 2014. Per section 405.185, applicants may apply for a special event permit, and I included the section of code for you. On January 27th, Linda Scott, care of Warrenton High School Band, submitted a special event permit application for Mud Bog and Motocross to be held at the Warren County Fairgrounds on May the 10th. I've included her original application, was dated January 27th. My response letter dated January 28th. A revised application dated February the 19th. My response letter dated February 25th, and then a response letter dated February 26th, along with additional information that was submitted on February 26th. You also have in your packet the photo of the public meeting notice that was posted at the Warren County Fairgrounds, and the notice that was posted in the front lobby of City Hall, and a copy of the notification to property owners.
Mr. Deitch, did you participate in this last year? I think you made a promise last year you were going to show up with your motorcycle. Did that happen?
There wasn't enough mud.
Okay. I know we had a big discussion last year on this.
We did.
I have a question on, there's an indication over the course of the application that some of the details needed to be cleared up. And so my question is, with respect to some of the parking questions, ingress, egress, and things of that nature, normally on these applications in the past, I think we typically see diagrams. Is the information that's submitted sufficient to answer the questions on ingress, egress, layout of the facility and things of that nature, since it's all in written format rather than in diagram format?
I've provided every piece of documentation that was submitted for your review and approval. In my opinion, there's not enough information provided for me to recommend approval
Was there
regarding
more,
safety issues.
was there more information provided last year?
A motocross race was not included last year.
It was just a mud bog.
It was too much fun last year. The motocross was something new that we wanted to try, but they'll be signing a waiver as well.
Well, I think on the motocross, I mean, part of it's safety, but part of it's also neighboring property owner related. And so, I mean, granted, the trucks will make noise as well.
Right.
So, but that's not something that's historically been common at the fairgrounds. I know recently they've had one or two events over the last couple of years that included some of that, but it's not historically been part of the other events that they've had at the fairgrounds that were not fair related.
I was going to say, they have had motocross at the fair.
At the fair, right, but anything that hasn't been fair related, I don't recall anything that involved motocross that hasn't been fair related.
So what, Jeff, what are you asking for?
I specifically
That you didn't get.
asked for.
Looks like he's saying,
I saw that in the report the other day.
mhm.
That's what I'm going to say here.
Is there a company that's coming in to do this motocross, or
Actually,
can you come up and step and state your name and so the group can hear you? Actually, the audience and the millions of people that are watching this on TV can see you.
I failed public speaking
just
in high
teasing.
school.
Surely not.
My name is Stacy Wolf. My youngest son is actually in band, but my oldest son is the one who does the motocross. My oldest son has been doing motocross since he was 5. It is actually a family-oriented sport. A lot of families participate in this. It's something that mom and dad bring their kids to the event and attend, and it's a thing that you can rely on yourself. It's a sport just like any other. You have some bad people come in from time to time, but you have bad people come in for basketball games at school, at wrestling at school, where we handle those. But as far as safety, I don't know exactly what concerns are, and I might be able to answer them because I've been going to them since my son was 5 and he's now 18. So, I mean, any questions you have, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them. It's just something we're trying to look at to maybe raise more funds for the high school band. So, and we have the opportunity with having the facility there from when they use it for the fair to use it for that too. So.
And I understand and agree that it is a family sport, and it's good for the community. It brings people in. I agree with that 100%. The specific items I was asking for is parking and traffic control plan details, including ingress and egress, and parking plans for the participants in the mud bog and the motocross. The information provided shows no information whatsoever. Where are the people that are participating in the race? Where are they going to be located? How are they getting from their pit area to the racetrack? Is there going to be any crowd within that area? There's absolutely nothing that was submitted.
Okay, so you need more details, like,
Exactly.
into that?
That
I
would,
know when they have the motocross at the fair, at the same time they're having the track and trucker pool and stuff. So it would be the same setup with the mud bog. You would have your mud bog people where the main stage is. Behind there and along the side is where the people from mud bog would be parked. And there's that middle entrance in the back. So that'd be kind of like your divider. To the one side is all the mud bog, and then to the other side is where we actually have the motocross, what they call pit area. And your participants would be able to park there, but we ask if you don't, if you're not a family member that you ride in, or you don't have a child racing, or you're not the mechanic for, because you do have 20-year-olds that have a mechanic, you don't get to be into the pit area, and you would just kind of mark that off with safety gating. They do that at the Washington Fair, and you actually get a wristband to be able to enter that area. And then you have your crowd watching along the main stretchway of the motocross area that's over by the old FFA area where they have the animals at. That's where they had seating at this past year for the motocross. So that they're completely separated, and they're in a safe enough area where they're not going to be where cars are going to be going back and forth. And you won't have the mud bog trucks going across that main area where people would be walking, so you don't have to worry about that. And there is a rule in motocross, there is no pit riding. So you were to like putt from your, your camp area where you're set up at to the startup line. You are not to be going at a full force because you can get in trouble for that. You can be kicked right out and you lose all, funds that you've paid for that day. So they're very strict on that.
Okay, and I'm not aware if you were, I don't know if you're aware of what was submitted, the drawing.
I didn't get.
Basically, it's an aerial from a couple thousand feet up, and it says motocross up in the corner. So with what you just described, that is exactly what I was looking for. Some kind of plan, detail, information, but with just what was provided, there's no way that, in my opinion, I can recommend approval. But
And that
it's
needs
up
to be
the-
submitted in written form, right? That's what I would think you're
That's
asking.
for you guys to decide.
Well, I think it should be.
I'd like to see some kind of layout. This aerial view just doesn't get it.
I don't even know what the aerial view
No,
is.
it
to tell you the
doesn't
truth. I'm here to answer motocross questions.
Well-
That would be Linda.
Hang on
Motocross
a
is just,
second, Melody can pull it up on screen.
Yeah.
My question though, you kept referring to they. Who's they? Like, my question is who's,
who's gonna police this?
that's my concern.
We asked for-
If Linda's the applicant, she is responsible.
That's
So
right.
there is no they. If there's a they need to
We
be
have
included in the application.
volunteers that sign up as the flag people, like they stand in certain areas. They do the scoreboard, the entry fee, and all of that. That is who they is. It's all of our volunteers of adults that are together. There's a gentleman, Chris Blankenship, that has done motocross tracks. Chris Petros at the fairgrounds actually is friends, and so is my cousin with the goalies. They're from Jonesburg, and they actually have two sons that do supercross. They will actually be at St. Louis next month.
So, but back to my.
He would be the ones doing the
Back to my
track.
question is, there is no they as far as running this motocross portion of this. I mean, the mud bog you're experienced in.
Right.
This is a new.
It's new.
This is a new task, and there's no they, there's no organization. It's just you guys taking this upon yourselves to run this, and that's scary. Okay.
I went out there and looked at the motocross over today because I couldn't make much out of this
Yeah.
drawing. Looks like there's about a 4 or 5 foot fence along the driveway here. And nothing else, that's it.
They put orange security gate up during the time and hay bales along that orange security.
There again, they, who?
The fairgrounds did, sorry,
The
when they did their
fairgrounds-
motocross, and we would be doing the same
Same
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
They know they have to do this, the fairgrounds.
Right.
When they did it at the fair, was that put on by the fair board, or did they hire like an association? Like when you do a truck pull, and maybe I'm confused here, but isn't there like people that go around and that's what they do? That's their job. They do truck pulls here, and then they go here, and then they go here. So is there the same type of thing for motocross?
No, not really. There's just experienced people in the area that have built the motocross tracks, like for the fair. The goalie, I know him by goalie, I do not know his first name, I'm sorry. He is from Jonesburg, Chris Petros is his first name. He built them, he builds them for the Warrenton Fair. He actually, him and Chris Blankenship go down to the dome and build them for the dome, for the Supercross. So there's no actual committee that falls around behind them for it. A lot of the places, like where my son goes, they're permanent. So they're owned by, individual tracks. And their family owned a lot of them. And their sons go out there on bobcats and everything, and clean them up and all of that. And it's all ran by volunteers there also.
Okay, so when the fair board does theirs, it is put on by the people, by volunteers for the fair board or fair board members?
Who provides event insurance for that then?
We would, actually.
I'm into the insurance right now, and I go through the school, and I'm also checking elsewhere to, see what else we can come up with, as far as like the costs and et cetera. And I do, it's like 1 million in one thing and 1 million in the other. It's like a $2 million policy overall or whatever to cover everything in case there is any problems. But everybody does sign a waiver that drives or rides or whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, and they're aware of this. But mud bogs is something I've been involved with for almost 24 years. Honestly, I know nothing about motocross.
And I don't even know if it's gonna be feasible to put on, if we could afford to put it on, but we wanted to make sure we had it's set in place, so if after we go through everything, if we can't afford it, then we just aren't going to do it. But we want it to be able to do and approve, before we waste the time to see how much it's gonna cost and everything.
You can help me clarify my own mind. And somewhere I read in here where the application was not considered accepted unless all the information that you requested was submitted. Is that correct?
That is on in the section of code and on the application. But I believe in Mrs. Scott's opinion, what she provided me on the 26th on the piece of notebook paper where she jotted down the mud bog barrier 20 feet from the spectators, 5-foot hog panel and concrete base, hay bales all the way around the motocross track, 4-foot chain link fence, 20 feet from spectators. I believe in her opinion she's provided that.
But in your opinion, is it provided?
My opinion is there was not enough information provided for me to recommend approval. That's my opinion. But she did supply information that I passed on to you guys because this is basically, you guys make the recommendation for approval or denial.
Would you consider the application as accepted then?
I think she would have an argument if I refused to present this to you because she has tried to provide everything that she was capable of.
Okay.
Good answer.
I'd like to say, first of all, that, both of you ladies know that I've had children that have been participants in band, and so, first of all, I appreciate as a parent what band boosters do and what parents in general do to support all the activities that the kids in school participate in. And I know it's an incredibly expensive endeavor to support a marching band, and that the school district, without the support of the band boosters, would have a very, very difficult time giving the opportunity to those students that take part in that. So I value, and I think we all value, what you're doing. On the other side of that coin, I just want you to understand that it's very important for this body in considering any requests. In my opinion, it's important that we have a full understanding of what's going to take place and how it's going to take place. And, we're still kind of in the evolving stages of how we review these permits, because it's really only about a year old now that we've been doing this. Having said all that, I don't think it would be our intent to prevent you from being able to support the organization. On the other hand, I think it is very critical that we have a full diagram to consider so that we can understand how people will come and go, how the layout of the property will be arranged, and how the events themselves will be staged. And, that fairgrounds, there are many, many things that can go on there. And over the years, the layouts have evolved and adapted and been handled many different ways. Mud bogs, I go back to when I was still in middle school, and back, we called it the Mud Marathon then, and it was a huge attraction and a lot of fun. And it amazes me the amount of time and money people put into those vehicles and then run them through the mud. But having said all that, I have a difficult time, and I don't know as far as time goes in getting the approval, how quickly this all has to happen in order for you to be able to move forward. you know, I tend to agree with Mr. Dickey. I think we need to see this in a formal, in a formal layout, how everything's, before we can make a full recommendation. The least, or I guess the most that I feel comfortable with would be allowing the Board of Aldermen to consider this contingent upon the submission of a full diagram. But I'm not sure then, I think we're passing the buck. So is there enough time that we can wait for a full diagram, or is it a simply accept or reject type of question tonight?
I guess that would be up to Linda on her deadline.
I have a question. So, the part that you're missing, I understand you're missing a lot on the motocross, because honestly, I knew nothing about the motocross. But the mud bog, what are you missing on that?
Well,
You mean like where they pull in and start, or?
yeah, if we look at Mr. Hanf's letter of February 25th, he specifically identifies point one, that we don't have a parking traffic control plan details, including ingress, egress, and parking plans for participants in the mud bog and motocross, which would suggest to me that we also need to know where those vehicles are going to be when they're not operational. Okay.
So I did leave that part out. And you want to know the starting line as well?
Right. I mean,
Okay.
more detail is better than less detail.
Well, I mean, yeah, I have no problem adding more into that, because I have 4 people that do my traffic control, if you want to call it that, and my parking, to get everybody where they go. And I mean, I definitely know where they're parking and which way we're going to run the trucks, and I can add that information as far as the motocross goes.
Well, I mean, as far as the motocross, I mean, if, at least we want to try to start doing it, and this is our first step. It doesn't mean it's going to be this year, but this is our learning process to see what more we needed to bring to you and explain to you. So, I mean, if it doesn't go this year, then maybe we'll try it again next year with better plans and be able to give you more information, but this was, you know.
Are you ladies aware that there's an engineered drawing of the motocross track?
That's what was supposed to be submitted to you.
That's the kind of thing that we're looking for.
That's what was supposed to be submitted to you. We got the permission to use the fairground layouts, and you guys were supposed to receive that. They gave us the full permission to use their layouts with the hay bales and everything around it, and, yeah, and I don't know where it's at because it was written and given to you.
And I don't know where the...
No, ma'am.
I don't know
Nothing from the Fair Board
That's
was
what was
provided.
in the letters.
I don't know
The
where...
only thing in the letter was permission to use the fairgrounds facility. There was absolutely
There was
nothing.
3 letters I handed you
No, ma'am.
from,
No, ma'am.
okay.
What I'd like to see, and I don't know where the Fair Board has a copy of this aerial view here, is a flat drawing showing the buildings there and things like that,
That's
where
the
they're
best-
at.
That's the best they can pull it up. I had to go over to over there by the library, the new municipal building or whatever you call it, and that is the best they can pull that up. I cannot even get a closer, because I would like it bigger myself, but I couldn't get one.
But you want a hand-drawn type out, is what he's saying?
As Mr. Dickey indicated, I believe those drawings exist.
It's just
Now,
getting
they
the
may-
Fair Board to-
I think they're in the possession of probably the Fair Board rather than in the possession. But, you know, these aerials are, that are available through the county, you know, they're somewhat descriptive, but to mark them up, you know, this is a color photo, and so when they're marked up, it's difficult to pick out exactly what's what, and it's certainly not dimensioned. I really do believe that the drawings exist of the layout of the fairgrounds with the track and things of that nature. The other point in Mr. Hant's letter, point 2, does ask for the mud bog track and motocross track plan details, and so those plan details would have to be visual plan details that include the general layout and location of the track, the audience areas, fencing, and/or safety barriers. And the importance of that is, you know, we understand you get waivers from your participants, okay? The spectator question is different altogether, because the spectators show up, there is no waiver requirement. And quite honestly, the existence of the waivers doesn't mean no one gets hurt. So, you know, the waivers are really a protection for the property owner and for the sponsors of the event. It isn't really any assurance that it's necessarily safe. So, what I'm pointing out to you is that, Mr. Hamp, I think, did clearly delineate what was necessary, what was not received, and those particular items in the general instructions for these permit requests, they're asked for. That it's in the overall list of information that needs to be provided. And so I believe all of us are willing to consider this request if that information can be made available.
And I can do that.
And I would like to add
That letter-
something for the record. I'm the one that informed Mrs. Scott that these drawings existed. And I specifically told her that I know the county had them drawn. Warren County Fair Association had them drawn. And that if she would give me, I couldn't just give her someone else's property. But if she gave me either an email from them or a written request,
Which is what I handed you.
that they exist to help her, because it's on a
So you're saying you had the
2-foot
drawings and they were all detailed and you gave them to
Well,
Mr. Hamp?
what they gave me is they typed up a letter saying that we could use, that we had the permission to use the drawings that was laid out for the for the fairgrounds to use that motocross track.
Okay.
And they signed a piece of paper saying for $1,000, we may have permission to use their layout. For $1,000, we may use it, all included in 1,000. The way it was laid out, it looks like we had to pay $3,000. And then it also said that for within the $1,000, also we may use the fairground, at the motocross and fairgrounds. So it had all three of the areas covered: the fairgrounds, the permission of the drawing, and the motocross track.
So did the Fair Board provide you the drawings?
They didn't give me the drawings, they put it in a list or something,
Okay.
and said you guys had them?
That's not how it works, though. And so this is a misunderstanding that you
Okay.
have, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay? We can't use someone else's drawings from a prior permit request to consider your event, because something will be different about your event than the last event.
Okay.
And so, I want it to be clear that while I think you feel like that because someone may have submitted those drawings to the city at one point or another, that forever and always, those are the drawings that will always be used. And so when you say that Mr. Hamp was given those, it doesn't sound to me like that's truly correct. I think you gave him what the Fair Board gave you, which is, you're welcome to use our drawings. However,
Okay.
in my opinion, it is your obligation to provide the
She didn't
drawings
supply any drawings.
specifically identifying exactly how
Yes.
your event is going to be conducted,
Okay.
because yours may be
I can't
different
give
than
her
someone
that.
else's.
Okay, I understand that.
And-
But yeah, that's what it was. It was a written permission that we could use their drawings, because.
Yeah, we see that here.
Okay, so that's where, like you said, I totally misunderstood, because I thought that's what Jack was asking for, the permission to use all of that. So.
Well,
my
what the
apologies.
permit said, and I got the wrong permit, it says $1,000 paid with the plans usage agreement. I don't see the plans usage agreement, is that in? our
Right,
stuff?
that's what's missing.
That's where I was totally, I guess, confused by, because I thought that's what the letter was covering, and you guys had the drawings, so that's why I was confused. And I will honestly get that, for you.
And the
provide
letter.
the rest.
Yeah, and the letter from Mr. Howdeshell to you about the officers helping out and walking through.
Yeah, you
It's
got
a-
that, right?
Right, it says, but it just says, about the mud bog. Did you tell him that there was going to be? the
Yeah, I
motocross
told him
event?
there was gonna be a motocross, or we were trying to get a motocross, so he
Okay.
said, good luck with that. So, yeah, so no, he knows, and he's aware.
So
Totally.
is the second Thursday in April pushing you off too far to, to get everything together for a May 10th?
Yeah, my problem is because I wanna have my t-shirts designed, the mud bog, we know all about the mud bog. My problem is if we're gonna try the motocross, if we're gonna be entitled to try the motocross, then I'd like to be able to have a t-shirt designed for the motocross, and that's not allowing Eagle Wear, that's pushing them, because now they're into their busy season, if that makes sense.
Well, it's also gives you a pretty short timeline in general. that was.
And that's why I wanted to kind of clarify, you know, do we have the luxury to look at this again in April? Does that give you enough time? You know, the alternative is to kind of throw it in the lap of the Board of Aldermen and say, well, assuming that A, B, and C are provided and they look okay, although we don't get to see them in advance, then we think it might be okay. And that's kind of passing the buck
Right.
in some respects, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree, because we specifically asked that it be brought here so we could make the decisions
Right.
and then submit it fully.
And our intention is certainly not to cause you delay
Oh, I
or to
understand that.
make it difficult. And the instructions, I understand, are a little bit lengthy, but they're not unclear. They are clear, I believe, on the items that are necessary. And that diagram, probably as much as anything else that is submitted, that diagram is as much, as informative as anything else that we're able to review.
So it's not just the motocross that's got you kind of, if we remove the motocross completely this year, for sure, it's also the mud bog that's got issues, area for the mud bog too.
I'd still like to see a flat drawing of the area where the mud bog's
Uh-huh.
at,
Right.
where the restrooms are on there.
Okay.
Yeah, you can look at this aerial view, but it doesn't give you any detail.
We could be talking about a craft fair. We still don't have a diagram to understand how people are getting in and out.
Okay.
I think the traffic control is important also.
Right. I mean,
And
I
then you got
understand.
you said you have 4 people, but how are you gonna use them and where are they gonna be? I mean,
The-
hopefully your event's successful and maybe
It always is, and I mean,
4
honestly.
people is, you know, that's.
And
what
it's
traffic-
honestly, it's plenty.
Okay.
Because everybody has to be checked in
But
by
if I just
11.
look at this, I don't know how, I couldn't tell you how that's gonna work.
Right, I understand what you're saying. And last year, I don't even, I guess that's why I didn't even add it, because last year I don't even remember having to add that into it. I tried to do everything that I remembered from the last 2 years of doing it to make sure you had everything you needed. I
Well-
also visited Jack 4 days, 5 days before the letter was supposed to be submitted to make sure nothing else was needed, and he said he turned it in, and that's all he had to say.
Well,
And wrote me a letter on
in
the
Jack's
25th.
defense, I read his response,
Yeah.
and you met in the hallway or something.
Front lobby.
And that doesn't give him time to review everything that was submitted. He
I
gave you,
had-
he said based on what you told him, it looked like everything was okay. And then when he had the chance to review it, there was things that was missing. So I don't see where he was being misleading at all.
No, he had it for like 4 days before I came in, because I had my schedule, I do not have a set schedule at work. You know, I either go in at 5 o'clock in the morning, or I'm there until 10 o'clock at night. I seriously don't have a set schedule. So I visited him, I believe it was 4 days later, to see if he had a chance to go over it, or if there was anything missing, because honestly, I just don't have time to keep stuff in, and I want to, because this is very important to me to help these band members out. It is, it's very important. So I wanted to make sure that everything was covered, and I knew that he had already had my packet for like 4 days, I think, at that time, when I had asked him if there was something missing to make sure, because I wanted to make sure it was all in on time, so that there was no issues tonight.
We're all after the same thing here.
Right.
We want to see you have a successful
I understand.
mud bog and all, and we
Right.
want the people of Warrenton to be safe and when they come out there to see
Right.
it. And no injuries or nothing, and it'll come off.
Right.
If there is an injury or something, the first thing we're gonna hear back in town is, why didn't somebody look at this?
Right,
And you
right.
let this happen?
So, okay,
That's why we need more detail
Okay.
to look at.
and I can do that for you.
Just another quick piece of advice, when you do these and get these drawings, keep
Hey,
them.
copies. I
Make
know, I'm
copies of them
learning,
and
I'm
keep- 'cause
learning.
It appears you're gonna have
I'm
this every
learning.
year.
I need copies of everything.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
appears you're gonna have it every year, so that'd be, just
Yeah.
get the drawings and keep them, and once we get them all finalized,
Right.
somebody keep them.
I'm gonna start making copies, because it is a lot of work, it is. And I mean, I totally don't mind putting every piece of energy into it though, for these kids.
That might be a good project for the school for mechanical drawing in my days, and now it's CAD
There you go, I'm gonna go to the draft department. This is your job.
You can almost lay a white piece of paper over this drawing.
I'll answer that on behalf of my best friend.
Thank you. Okay, so if we drop the motocross, I know I can do it on April because I can have my t-shirts designed on my
Right.
trucks. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, you know, and I can get the rest of that submitted on the on the mud bog. The motocross is where I'd be iffy because I wouldn't have enough time to really, honestly, for Eagle Wear to do what they need to do and other things.
Well, we'll leave that up to you, and
Well-
we'll entertain a motion.
Another option would be, I mean, obviously, we have lots of options, but we could pass it on to the Board of Aldermen with some parameters, or the other thing we could do is have a special meeting. If we felt like that was,
I like Teresa.
I still have a concern with,
I do.
his letter was very clear, and I don't think the information was submitted that he asked for.
and I think that his letter was very clear, and I think that she clearly thought she had provided what he wanted, and I think that there was some communication issues, and, but I mean, that's,
I remember going over this permit last year, right?
Right. Mhm.
Did she have new things for this permit for the mud bog alone? Or how do we go about passing it last year?
Chris did my planning and zoning meeting for me because of my work schedule. So honestly, it's my first planning and zoning, but I've always went to the next one, the
Board of
city,
Aldermen.
the Board of Aldermen.
I just think.
So
it was
honestly, I don't
successful last
know.
year, whatever she put on was approved. What did we do last?
And I think that's, I would feel better about what she said, sending it to the Board of Aldermen with some parameters for the mud bog, not the mud bog and the
No,
motocross.
I agree.
If it's the motocross, then I think it has to come back through here.
For the motocross.
Yeah.
Get your ducks in a row, and have your planning and do it full gusto next year and double your attendance.
Okay.
So what you're saying is you want to make a motion?
That's up to somebody.
you got one?
Oh, I'm new.
Yeah. You're new on the
That's
iPad.
old kind of new. Mrs. Scott, you want to try to work one, or or do we need more discussion on?
I don't know, what are we looking for here that?
So before there's even a motion, so what's being offered is to have actual drawings, not the aerial, but actual drawings that people can relate. This goes here, I can see the 20-foot for safety, I can see this on the drawing, and that being sent forward to the Board of Aldermen with our stating that we recommend this as long as the Board of Aldermen states that
Those parameters have been met. And we're talking, and in that situation, I'm talking about just the mud bog, because they've had that before. We've been through this.
This would be the third one.
Yeah. So there is some recognition of what's happened there before, and they have some experience. The motocross is where it just scares me to see someone stick out their neck, and especially associated with the school, stick out their neck on something brand new and not have all their ducks in a row. That would be.
Driving out there and looking at that motocross thing today, it looks like an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, that's what scares me. And I love
It is
riding
very scary
just
looking.
I
I
love
agree
riding
with you.
motorcycles.
So good. But I think we'll make a motion to send it on to the Board of Aldermen and to just have her drawings have to be there, or whatever you're requiring, that they're there at that meeting. If they're not, then.
Are you talking about
For both?
just for the mud bog?
Or
Just
just,
for the mud bog.
Just mud
Strictly
bog.
for the mud
That's all- that's all I've been talking about all along. I'm gonna advise that they just
Yeah,
get the
we'll
motocross and put it on next year.
Yeah, just
They're
set that
getting
off
their
to the
learning
side.
curve with the motocross now.
So right now, we're dropping the motocross altogether.
Yes, I've been involved with mud bogs for 24 years, and I'm totally safe, feel 100% confident with it.
But if you're planning on one maybe next year, now's the time to get that drawing.
Well,
Well, yeah, no, you're correct on that.
I understand. And copies, got
Yeah.
it.
So let me understand, Mr. Schwab, you're making a motion basically to, if they are intending to drop the motocross application part and continue with the mud bog, as long as they present the needed documentation that has been presented to them by Mr. Hamp, and the questions from the board about better drawings of egress and so forth, and where everything is located, and where traffic and so forth is, the things that should be shown, as long as that has been presented to the board of aldermen,
Yes.
would give them an opportunity to still approve it with, as long as the parameters have been met that we said so. Is that what you guys
I have
kind of
trouble wording
understand?
it, but that's what I'm trying to say.
Because of some of the questions regarding how the communication
Right.
works. And I don't want us to get into a situation where they're unclear on what's expected for the Board of Aldermen to really give this consideration. If we're gonna forward this
Go back to
to
the
the board, I think we should be very, very specific on exactly what has to be in the diagram. And I would think that the motion should be worded to the letter to recognize the items in Mr. Hant's letter of the 25th. So the diagram should include parking and traffic control plan details, including ingress, egress, and parking plans for participants in the mud bog and motocross.
No motocross.
No motocross.
I'm sorry, drop the motocross. And mud bog track and motocross track plan details, including the general layout and/or location of the tracks. Again, delete motocross, I'm
Right.
sorry.
That's fine.
Layout and/or location of the tracks, audience areas, fencing and/or safety barriers, and I would like to include dimensioning to the nearest foot of everything. Dimensioning to the nearest foot of the spectator areas, the distance from the track, et cetera.
Like where the restrooms are located and.
And then, yeah, and then again,
The
you also do
concession
need to
stands.
indicate the location and number of restroom facilities. I don't need you to, or I wouldn't say that we would need to see a distance of the restrooms from the track, that kind of dimensioning. But dimensioning relative to the competition area and the
Okay.
spectator area. And then, I think Mr. Hant's letter does specifically spell out the items that weren't really clearly shown.
All right.
That's a long way of putting a motion together, but it's in Mr. Hant's letter.
But it's in that letter dated February 25th.
Okay.
Mr. Schwab, are you okay?
Well, if that's a motion, I'll second it.
Mr. Schwab, was that okay?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so we have a motion by Mr. Schwab that includes the letter from Mr. Hamp on February 25th that states out the three things that are actually, one's marked number 1, one's marked number 2, and then underneath it, it talks about the restroom facilities. Those are specifically spelled out in his letter. As long as those are met and presented to the Board of Aldermen, we will pass the buck, and we tend not to do this, but in case of time parameters, we will ask for forgiveness and not permission, so. Because they know that we work very well together and we understand it. But in this case, we're throwing out the motocross, which is our biggest concern. Mud bog has been done before, so they should be able to do that. And that motion will be seconded by Mr. Scott. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? This time, we'll take a roll call vote then.
Mr. Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Jurgenmeier?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Kohler?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
No.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes. Motion passes 9-1, and that'll go in front of the board next. Anyone got a date?
18th.
Say it again?
18th.
18th. March 18th.
March 18th at 7.
Yes.
At 7.
Tuesday night.
Thank you, ladies, for your time, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for supporting the school.
Thank you.
And I would like to state for the record that my no vote was, I'd much rather this board
Right.
have a special meeting and look at that rather than send it on to the town board.
That's fine.
You guys are.
We like you too.
Thank you, guys. You guys are great. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right.
All right, let's move on to the next item, which is amendment to section 405.050, definitions and interpretation, ADM 66A, and thank everyone for their patience tonight.
Once again, this is a proposed text amendment to section 405.05 0 definitions and interpretations, ADM-66A, and it is to include a definition for transitional living into the city's municipal code.
And I think most of the questions were asked during the public hearing. I apologize for, that should have been done in the open meeting, but does anybody have any questions or comments at this time that they still didn't get answered?
I'll be abstaining from this discussion and the next, actually, two, due to business.
Duly noted, Mrs. Scott will be abstaining from the next 2 orders of business at the meeting. Thank you, Mrs. Scott.
So verifying after the discussion previously, the only addition or change to this would be these facilities are for individuals 20 years of age or less, excluding staff. And that was the only thing that was decided, right?
There was also a discussion that this had to be on, could not be on premises, right?
That does say there, though.
Did it say that on there?
A residential
That's the
structure
first-
specifically excluding,
Yeah.
so it's in there.
The first statement
Yeah.
says it excludes.
Excludes substance abuse.
Right up on the top row here on the right.
In the red.
Does it say,
Towards the right, top.
I see that, but I mean, is it saying exactly what we think it's saying? Because there was something said about having it on, it had to be off premises in this wording. You said something about adding that into the statement. Is that not needed?
No, I asked Kathy if there was facilities where they could perform the treatment off premises.
Okay. So the way it's worded,
This
would exclude
specifically
it on
excludes
premises.
any on-site treatment.
For substance abuse counseling and treatment,
Treatment,
which
yes.
that's a shady area in itself because they've already been through, at least in this case, not by the definition, but from what she's saying, they've already been through substance abuse counseling, and it's a generic counseling that they do once a week. Is that the way that I'm understanding it, or is there specific drug counseling that can occur there? I just wanted to clarify that.
No, there's no,
Yes, thank you, Ms. Pritchard.
first of all, not all of them have, but some may have gone through treatment in the past. There is no treatment done. The program doesn't perform any treatment. There's no treatment done on site. There's counseling, which is just general counseling. It's like going to see your school counselor once a week.
Right, see, and that's the point that I was trying to make, because this specifically excludes substance abuse counseling and treatment. Well, that's general counseling. It may be, okay, here's the child who has an alcohol problem, and this is their AA counseling for the week, just as a general.
Right.
But that's not specifically substance abuse counseling and treatment. That's just general counseling is what she's describing. So that's the reason why I think in this case, we're saying to do it off the residence, but I don't even know if, just for this case, if that would be a necessity. Because it's not substance abuse
It's
counseling
definitely not,
that they're
right.
receiving. They're receiving general counseling for any previous life issues that they may have had, which can include drug and alcohol issues. So, I mean, it's kind of a shaky situation, but to actually have them move off for general counseling, in my opinion, I don't know if that would be necessary.
I don't think that's the intention of this.
Right.
I think the intention of this is someone that comes specifically to do counseling for substance abuse, alcohol, whatever the substance happens to be. But general counseling, if something comes up in the course of that general counseling, there's no way to, the only way around that is to say you'll have no counseling at all.
Right.
And, yeah.
I was
And
just trying to make
that's not
it,
what we want to do, I don't.
And I don't believe that was Mr. Graville's goal either.
Yeah.
It was just specifically for the substance abuse.
Right.
Be pretty hard to run a program without counseling, right?
Well, I need counseling. I mean, I think everybody could use it weekly, but, yeah, it would be.
We
And-
all do, but we don't admit it.
But yeah, and it is the counseling part, like I said, foster kids, it's part of their overall plan, and it's a good thing. It really is. But, and we, just for your knowledge, in the 2 years we've been running, our first group that we had a couple boys that had some serious drug issues, and that was actually before I owned the program, but I did run it, so I learned very quickly what we accept and what we don't, and I'm very strict about that piece of it. And since that group, we just don't have issues with it. We're, like I said, we use Avertest, we randomly drop them, and there's no perfect, and I'm not going to say that I know everything that goes on with the kids, but I know almost everything that goes on. In fact, they tell on each other. They like to see who gets to be the favorite and tell on the other one. And but we take it very seriously.
Well, I have a concern though, if we're just excluding the substance abuse counseling and treatment. I understand in this case, I think I would be okay with your facility and what you're doing, but then would we be opening ourselves up for opening up in this residential area, inpatient treatment center for some other kind of mental illness in a neighborhood, if we're going to allow kids to live in a house and have transportation and meals and live there all the time, and then but we also allow for on-site counseling for
I think that's a case-by-case basis, isn't it?
I think that would fall under the definition, which is a state definition for a group home for mentally developmentally and physically handicapped
Emmaus
persons.
has group homes right down on Market Street, down the street, where they provide that same service. It's structured a little differently, and it has staff that is on site in the unit, so that's a little different.
Main reason I keep hitting on that is I just want to make sure that this definition is good for everyone, but I didn't want to alter what she has going on already for the last 2.5 years by this definition. So
and I just want to be sure that I'm following it to the letter. I don't want to come back and have an issue later that, well, that kid said he used drug 5 years ago to his counselor, and now you're in violation. Although anything that they say in counseling is confident. I mean, the HIPAA, it's not going to be disclosed, but I just want to make sure that we're following it, and like you said, that it works. But
plus, this gives you a little bit of teeth in your system that can help you be a little choosier.
Exactly. Well, and I don't take, if they have a felony, I don't take them because my landlord won't let me. And that's my easy out. Oh, my lease says I can't take anybody with a felony. So that.
Planning and zoning said no.
It's kind of my out.
Can I ask, have you, or would you knowingly accept a resident that had an existing substance abuse or alcohol problem? Not one previous, but one that was actively ongoing.
If I knew they currently had a substance abuse problem.
Or alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol, substance, both, but absolutely not. I couldn't. And if I knew I absolutely would not. And I have a referral process. And part of that process, the current placement provider has to give me information, current information. I can get information back to the day they got into care. Some of them were in care at birth, so I don't get everything, but I would not if I had knowledge of that, no.
It seems like, I think most of the hesitation is, are we intentionally or unintentionally creating circumstance where, we would actually be bringing individuals into our community that had that existing situation that was not under control. And so it appears to me that the way that this is written essentially is saying that the facility must exist for a purpose other than primarily providing that treatment. And so I don't read in this that counseling in and of itself isn't allowed on site, just specifically that this facility or any facility that met this definition should not exist for the primary purpose or even a secondary purpose necessarily of helping someone
Right.
with a substance abuse or alcohol abuse issue. So I'm comfortable, it appears to me that there's a similar opinion across the board here, that the definition is clear on that.
And without calling it counseling, we do say professional support.
Right.
Is what you're
Correct.
doing.
Which that
but
is,
it's not
correct.
specifically substance abuse counseling or treatment. So it's still saying that professional support is approved for that facility.
Okay, true.
We'll entertain a motion at this time, or anybody else have a question?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deitch, second by Mr. Costello, to approve the amendment to section 405.050, definitions and interpretation, ADM 66A, as stated in the book, in the red, correct?
But did we want to add excluding
Excluding
staff?
Yeah, I think we
With the
need to
with the exception of adding that staff members could be over
Yeah.
20.
Agreed.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott abstained. Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Jurgenmeier?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Kohler?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0 with one abstention. And move on to the next business, amendment to Appendix A, ADM 66, which was tabled at the last meeting. And Mrs. Scott will be abstaining from this one as well, is that correct? Okay.
This is picking up from the text amendment request to Appendix A, ADM 66, that was tabled at the February 6, 2014 meeting. And originally it was, it's to add to Appendix A the ability to list transitional living as an option to the group living definitions.
And that's going to be conditional, so any situation that comes up still has to come in front of us, correct?
Yes. I believe that was the request to allow it to be conditional, a conditional use within the R3
And I think that
zoning
protects what
district.
a lot of the questions up here was, that protects us too.
Yes, then each individual case, you'd be able to have specific
Which is very
information
important.
and conditions for that specific site.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the text amendment to Appendix A and ADM 66 to specify transitional living as a conditional use in the R3 zone.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Dickey, to approve the amendment to Appendix A, ADM 66, which was tabled at our last meeting, to make it conditional use in R3, transitional living under the group living. Any questions at this time before we move on with the vote? Roll call vote.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Kohler?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott abstained. Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Jurgenmeier?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0 with one abstention again. And again, thank you to everybody for their great questions tonight on a very important topic. And Ms. Pritchard, thank you for your patience. The last order of business before we move on to the zoning officer's report, amendment to Appendix A that Mr. Horner presented tonight.
And I will be abstaining from this vote as well.
And Mr., the new guy, will be abstaining from. And Mrs. Scott will be back.
Abstaining.
You're abstaining this one as well? All right. So we have two abstentions on this one, Mrs. Scott and Mr. Kohler. Thank you.
This is a text amendment request to Appendix A, ADM-67, to change the zoning grid to allow RV parks and campgrounds as a permitted or conditional use within the C3 zoning district.
So again, this is a conditional use, and does that mean that every time that they have somebody coming, they have to come in front of us?
His application requesting for you to consider it either as a permitted or a conditional. I think the applicant is open to either way, but that's how his application was.
Sure.
He's requesting you consider either way.
And I know how the board's going to feel about that from previous.
If I may,
Mr. Honer?
My personal opinion is, and I don't know if I need to tell you who I am.
No, you're fine, Mr. Honer.
My personal opinion would be just make that a conditional use so that anybody in that zone region would have to come before you. I mean, that's what makes the most sense to me.
And that's what I mean, that's what I knew that's what's going to be the feeling of the board, because we always look out for the protection of, because we know that we trust you.
Sure.
But if we make
I hope.
if we make the next one permitted,
right,
who knows? But this time, everybody has to come.
That's why I wanted to state my opinion. It would make
Sure.
the most sense to make it conditional use. And I'm assuming that if you do approve this, then we would have to come back with an application for a conditional use permit?
Yes.
Yes.
Permit a site plan, and a site plan would be required along with a conditional use permit application.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Anybody have questions on that?
Well, if we're going to consider a conditional use option, I think it's also important to kind of have some understanding what conditions might be requested, because to just arbitrarily open up conditional use,
let people know up front.
you know, it's not just this particular piece of property now that comes into play. It's every piece of property in the city that's similarly zoned. And so one applicant's concept of what conditional use is acceptable might be entirely different than what someone else's conditional use might be. Someone else's conditional use might be, you know, we can have 50 units there at one time for durations of up to a month, or whatever the case is, which is considerably different than one
One or 2
traveling
days.
elk member who stops in over a weekend. And so I don't want that to hold up the consideration of conditional use in general, but it's the same thing we always talk about, which is in our effort to reasonably consider something that on the surface looks like it will work. Are we also committing ourselves to 1,000 different other possibilities that might not be as agreeable? The other thing that I think we can't overlook is that we've had requests in the past for camping, so to speak, in other areas, and we weren't able to come to some agreement as to how to allow that to happen. And the specific example that I remember is when one of our local churches wanted to do a construction project and to use essentially volunteer labor, free labor, to do their construction project. And that was going to require on-site camping. Ultimately, Planning and Zoning Commission, and I think eventually the Board of Aldermen, did not feel like the way that that was asked for could ultimately be allowed. And whether or not it was the reason why that project didn't happen, I don't know. I don't know if it was the main reason or not, but it didn't happen. And so, you know, do we have to always act the same? Are the situations the same? Are there differences here that make it more of a possibility than the last time? I don't want to leave out that, because there are people that will remember it. So.
They were asking for sewer hookup and everything else, weren't they, Scott?
Yes.
I believe there was some sewer and temporary electric, but, I mean, it's been a few years, 6 years maybe.
I remember as well.
So.
Because I mean, I think at that point, there was even a suggestion to go down 2 miles down the road to Dogwood and use that facility, but that was not, I mean, there was considerable, yeah.
And again, I'm not sure whether it ended up being the sticking point that made it a do or don't construction project. I just, I'm not positive that it was the only factor that ended up being the reason, but,
So how do we go about making sure that this condition, that we make it public record, that we think that conditions would be certain types of things, or?
No sewer hookup,
Right.
that's one. No gas hookup. I don't know anything about RVs, but when you're hooking into sewers and doing all the other stuff, that means long-term. So,
Yeah, and that's why I said, we're just looking to give somebody an outlet to where they can plug in a 110. So they can run their lights at night and recharge the battery that's on the front of their RV. We're not gonna supply water or sewer because it's cost prohibitive. We'd have to tear up our whole property to run those lines, plus get a permit to do so. That's what started this whole thing, was we wanted to put a couple of plug-ins out in the 50-foot out past our parking lot in our vacant lot there where there's electric right there. And one of our members came up and said, I need a building permit so that I can drop the line in and put a junction box so we got plug-ins for 2 RVs. And they said, you can't do that. There's no place in town that is zoned to do that.
Mr. Jacoby?
Some of these RVs have self-generators,
Yes, they do.
and they're very loud, some of them. And I don't know if there's, I don't see where your area is here, but if you've got residential property right next to it, you could have a problem with the neighbors don't want a loud generator going on all night, and they do run them all night.
Oh, yeah, and I understand that, and I do have an RV, and I can assure you, if I can pull up to the Elks Lodge and plug into their electric for nothing, I'm not gonna run a generator all night, because that's gonna cost me to replace the fuel that it takes to run it. But, like I said, most of our visitors, I think I can only remember a couple of times where people stayed 2 nights, and one of them was 2 or 3 years ago, and they were going to an activity in St. Louis. They just elected to park here, had a vehicle behind their motorhome, and drove it to St. Louis and back. So
And you
that
said-
they didn't want to park in there. They wanted to park out here.
So you said people, and previously it was one person, but what's been the most amount of people that you've had come through that have wanted to stay, had the RV option?
I don't ever remember us having 2 RVs on our lot at the same time, but I may have missed one. So I'm not gonna say it's never happened, but I don't remember ever having over 1. And like I say, the longest I ever remember seeing us for 2 days. That was because they were in St. Louis for a 2-day activity and wanted to stay out here. I mean, it's gonna be, we'll be selective, and my letter of application said it, to offer visiting members the privilege, and that's what we look at it as, the privilege to park at our facility. But when they do park there, then they usually have come in and they don't wanna cook, so we're gonna say, where do you want to, where you got to go eat? Well, we said, well, we have Applebee's, we have Brewski's, we have the Hideout, we have, Denny's, or, we let them know where all the eating places are around town so they can go get them a decent deal, relax. We're not planning on turning it into a commercial business. We're in business to support our community. We're a nonprofit charitable organization, and we don't have any intention of becoming a RV campground.
This would also, though, open it up to every subdivision in town for my buddy wants to bring his camper in here and stay overnight and plug into my house, or a couple campers. I mean, we're opening this up to the whole town, it looks like to me.
Aren't
Well,
we, he's specifically asking for the C3 zone.
C3 zone.
The pink
Not
areas,
for a wide open
commercial.
zone.
Okay,
That's highway
sorry.
commercial.
Right, this is not in residential.
No.
The request
No, no.
is just for, it had to be for highway, it had to be for C3 because that's where their property's
Right.
located.
Right.
which does limit it a little bit. I mean, that's,
Two areas, C3 here.
yeah, middle of the highway too.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, any additional changes we want to make to our property, I mean, we've got a couple of 110 outlets, one on each end of our building, but if we want to add a plug-in out in our big open lot there, we're going to have to get a building permit to drop it in and put the electric stanchion in. I mean, there's electric to it already, but we were, and that, like I said, that's what drove the whole thing to get it started, was because one of our members who's a licensed certified electrician came up here to get a building permit so he could put a stanchion in, so we could accommodate it, because occasionally we'll have a visitor come through and they want to park at our facility on Monday night. Monday night we have bingo. We don't want them parked right up alongside our building because we need the parking there for our customers. So that's kind of what drove it all.
What would be the most units you'd foresee wanting on premises in a given time?
Well, right now, if we could do what we have planned, which is 2 plug-ins on our building and then put 2 more out at the outlet, we only have room for 4. But again, that's no water or sewer. That's strictly electric.
So if you've never had, in your knowledge, more than one at a time, maybe you've had 2, but you don't remember it, why do you need 4 hookups?
We just want to move them away from our building. So when we've got an activity like we did Saturday, if we had a visitor in, we had the chili cook-off, which the proceeds from that benefit the local fire departments. If we'd had a camper wanting to park there, they'd have taken up some valuable parking space. We could move them out on our open lot and then they'd be out of the way.
So you're saying that when you don't have a crowd, you wouldn't mind them being up near the building, but if you did have a crowd, you'd want them off out of the way?
Yeah, and actually it'd be more conducive, being a camper, I'd rather be away from the building myself. You know, where if you're out in a grassy area, I mean, it's a good solid rock base, but, you know, get away from the building and you don't have, that way if people, regular members are coming and going, you don't have the lights shining in and all that stuff.
How long is the intention of letting them stay? 1
2
night,
days.
2 nights?
Probably 2 days.
I mean, 2 days, that'd be it.
Yeah. I mean, we've never had anybody stay, to my knowledge, longer than that.
So no sewer, 4 max, 2 days. Those are the different options that have been.
No outdoor cooking, although you guys do barbecues all the time, but that wouldn't be part of this, but no outdoor cooking.
Do we want to say that you can't charge a fee so that nobody does decide to make this into a business?
Well, I mean, you know, when I was mentioned that earlier, the fire pits, you go to a regular campground, you have fire pits up there. You can sit out there till 11 or 12 o'clock at night around the campfire, but you're not allowed to have an open flame in the city of Warrenton after dark, unless that's changed.
6 o'clock.
So,
I think it's sundown, I don't know.
yeah, right.
I don't know.
That's why I say that's not an issue, and we don't want to dig a pit out there, because if nobody's here there and we need the parking space, we're gonna park cars and trucks right there where they're.
Well, the issue of the open fire is simply that it may spread and then it's somebody else's problem.
Sure.
And I don't know if they've changed this listing or not, but it was back in October 13 when we first made contact with a member who was camping there and had his RV plugged in. And at the time, he provided us a copy of the Elkdom travel guide, and it lists the Warrenton site, and it listed they had three sites plus the lot, and it listed they provided the water, or the electric 15 amp, water's at the lodge, and the dump is nearby. So I'm assuming that's for
That's
dumping
Pendleton
the
or
sewers.
Forest
It was
City.
nearby.
Go and dump it.
And under fee, it's listed as donation, and for stay, it's listed as unknown. So I don't know if they've changed what they've got in this travel guide for the Elks or not, but that's the information that we were provided back in October of 13 when we first made contact with the individual. And it was very pleasant conversation. It was similar to what Mr. Harnan said. He had come, they had business in Winsville, he was staying there, they did their deal in Winsville, and he left the next day. And when we made contact, you know, he was in his pajamas and he was worried that he was in trouble or brought trouble to the Elks. And we explained to him, no, you don't have to race off this parking lot. We just wanted to make sure that not only are you aware, but we ended up sending a letter to the Elks to make sure they understood that it wasn't a permitted use. We didn't run the gentleman off. He left that afternoon anyway. It was part of his original plan, but that's what brought it to my department's attention. There was a complaint, how come I can't plug my motorhome in at my house, but here the Elks have them plugged in? And that's why we went out to follow up on a complaint.
And we were not aware whatsoever that that wasn't allowed. I mean, that came on us, but once it was brought to our attention.
Yeah, you're trying to resolve the issue.
We started pursuing it, and so we can do it, because we want to be a gracious host, because if I'm going anywhere in the United States and I'm going through a community and they have an Elks Lodge there, I can open up my register and say, well, they have plug-ins, so I can stop there and spend the night. I go in, if they serve food on a regular basis, you can go in and eat and just visit with like-minded people. Because we are a private organization, you don't go in there if you're not a member, flash your card, you're kind of treated like, we call it family.
If this would go through, and you have a couple campers down there, let's say, and the police go by, or the code enforcement people would go in there to question, how would you identify? How would they identify these people? Would they have to have a special tag from the lodge on the camper that we would be aware of, the law enforcement would be aware of?
I mean, if they're gonna be there, they've gotta be an Elks Lodge member, and you got a membership card.
And that might be something that would be specific when they actually submitted application for that site-specific conditional use. I don't know if that'd be something we can address in the overall, would this be permitted use or conditional use within the zoning district.
And if we put the two plug-ins out in the pole in our vacant lot, there's gonna be a switch up on our building where it can shut them off, just like there are the two outside plug-ins we have right now.
Yeah.
They're not live 24/7, 365, because we don't want people coming in and stealing electricity off of us, you know? We are open almost every day of the year, but I mean, we have, to control that kind of stuff.
It'd be helpful to know that for electric car, if you had an electric car.
Yeah.
Help me to understand here, the only difference between what Mr. Horner is proposing with the Elks Lodge and, let's say, Walmart's parking lot is the electrical plug-in, is that
Yeah,
correct?
they don't plug in over at Walmart.
Right, I know that, but that's the only difference.
That's the only difference.
If it's a licensed vehicle parked in Walmart's lot, unless
They
Walmart
can camp there.
asks the police to make them leave the premises, they're okay to be there, but they're not plugged into utilities.
Right, and that's the only difference here.
That is absolutely the only difference, just like I have two people on my street that have campers parked in their driveway year-round, but they're not plugged in. Unfortunately, my camper's too big to fit in my driveway, so I can't leave it there. So I have a storage unit out at one of the storage places where I park my camper out there. So, yeah, we just want to enable our, if you will, brothers and sister Elks visitors coming through the community, the hospitality, to offer them opportunity to stay there.
Would you allow an elk to tent camp?
Probably not, but I can't say for sure.
You had a bad experience with the tent?
No, I'm just saying that, you know, when you talk about camping, you know, that's, when I think of camping, I think of tent camping.
Well, I agree with you. I'm just, it's not good when
And I just wondered if that was included in this.
That was something I'd have to go back to our governing board with and have them discuss that. And I don't know exactly how it's worded in our national book, if you will, to say what we have available to them. So, and that's just part of the directory that's available to everyone.
Is there any way, instead of amending the appendix to permit or conditionally allow this type of use in this zone or any zone, is there any way that we could instead stipulate a list of specific conditions? Because my concern, you know, you put a conditional use in, and in the appendix, all you have is a C. So what that says to someone later on down the road that's not knowledgeable about this conversation in this particular instance, they see that it's a conditional use, you know, possibility. They buy a large piece of property, possibly with the intent, and it's a buyer beware marketplace. We know that, but after the purchase has been made and they, you know, come before this body or the Board of Aldermen and find out that the conditions are maybe more restrictive than allowing a full-on campground, commercial campground. You know, none of that shows up when I see conditional in the appendix. And so I'm wondering if there would be a way, instead of defining conditional or permitted in this zone or any other zone, we were instead to put some type of limitation in place to say that an RV, that you can have no more than 2 on any premises in the city limits, that they may not be occupied for more than a period of 48 hours, that they may, or whatever period of time the P&Z and Board of Aldermen feel like is appropriate, that there may not be any open flames outside, consistent with what the city code already says, that any such occupancy must be, the city must be notified for the duration of the occupancy. All those things, rather than making a change in the appendix itself. Because my concern is that if we make the change in the appendix, we open up a Pandora's box that we may not ever be able to hold those limitations to.
But now, like what Jack said, so for Walmart, they come in, you're an RV, can you,
well,
is there a time frame? Because then
Walmart is a special situation.
Yeah.
Walmart, sometime you ought to read up on how that all got zoned. Because Walmart's zone is set up, it's the only zone in the city's C4, and it is written in a way that says anything that is allowed in any zone in the city limits of Warrenton is allowed in that zone. So you may as, I mean.
Okay, skip Walmart then.
Yeah.
All right, let's take that. All right, I'll read that one sometime later.
And it's not just specifically Walmart, it's
right.
It's that C4 zone.
I see the C4 zone in here.
But, so basically, if you can do it in anywhere in Warrenton, you can do it there.
Okay.
And since we have OPR, where you can do some of that limited camping, you could do that there.
And I can understand Mr. Costello's argument up to a point, that we have times when it's almost dark and a visiting elk pulls in and said, hey, is it okay if I plug in here to the edge of your building? We don't have time to get it. There's nobody here to call and say, we have a visitor that's gonna plug in at our 110 plug-in. I mean, if it would happen.
Well, and I'm not saying you have to go down to City
Shame
Hall.
on us because
Yeah.
we didn't know it was against the rules previously.
It's not my suggestion that you should have to come down here on a weekend when the City Hall's closed, but the phone rings, and you always have people that are there and in charge. It might be something as simple as a notification
Right.
to a specific, I mean, you know, you can get a hold of the city 24/7, you know that. Just simply so the city were aware.
It might be something to change the definition, instead of changing the zoning grid, maybe consider changing the definition of the vacation or recreational vehicle. Because right now, it says all vehicles used or constructed for use for conveyance upon public streets and highways and duly licensed as such and constructed for human occupancy as dwellings or sleeping places for one or more persons, provided further this definition shall refer and include all portable contrivances used and intended to be used generally for temporary living or sleeping quarters capable of being moved by its own power, towed or transported by another vehicle, including camper trailers of any sort, pickup campers. However, such vehicles may not be connected to utilities at the owner's property site, are used as a living quarter there, or parked in any other required front yard. Maybe in that definition, you might be able to put a specific where that maybe it can be plugged in for a period of
No more than
7
48
days or
hours.
less, or
Right.
whatever you guys agree,
And-
as long as there is no water or sewer hookup. I mean, that might be the easiest way to help their situation out, help other people in town out, but not open up
Because you know as well as I do.
the
that-
zoning grid that they're, you know, from some of the fears that you expressed.
Because you know as well as I do, if somebody, and I'm not a camper myself, I grew up in Oaks, Missouri, we camped every night, but people that are getting ready to go camping, you know as well as I do that they plug in their things for
And get
a couple
everything
days to
charged
get
up
everything
like
ready.
the gentleman
So they're
said.
breaking the rules.
Yes.
So I mean, if doing it in the definition would give us some restrictions on saying, yeah, we know you're doing that, but you got 48 hours to take care of that business or whatever.
Yeah, because like most everybody winterizes their camper.
Right.
I get ready to go camping this spring, I'm gonna bring it up.
Sure.
Back in my front yard and load it up,
Right.
probably hook the hose up and at least partially fill a drinking water tank up, one the thing. And then, you know, have my battery charged and everything, and I'm ready to roll.
But I think that's a great idea instead of changing, like Mr. Costello said, instead of changing the whole thing, open it up to everything, pinpoint it in there where you can put some.
Maybe modify the
Can we table that and
definition.
have Chris look at that?
You know, I mean, like Jack says, the 70 or 7-day
Or
rule
whatever they decide.
would be, you know, a little more realistic than 48 hours, because
Would this be for any zone then and not just C3?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking.
Well, we could sure include that when we revise the definition, if that's a specific that you guys would want to include.
Well, I think if you're talking about the time thing, in residential, I don't think you need more than 48 hours, but in commercial, like in this situation, maybe you want 4 or 5 days or whatever, I don't know.
But,
well, even my home, my wife's still working. I'm fortunate enough, I retired 2 years ago. But she's gonna retire in a couple of months, but I'd pull our camper in, back it in, and plug it in, and then clean it up.
Right.
And it might be Wednesday, and she doesn't get off till Saturday.
Oh, I
I'll
see.
pull out Friday night or Saturday morning, so it's in there 2 or 3 days. Just making sure everything works right.
And they're also used for additional housing if you have guests come in. I've done that with my camper. When I lived in St. Louis County, we had a lot of people come in for a wedding, and I let them stay in my camper, in my driveway.
well, you can't do that here.
I know.
Right.
That's why I'm coming back.
Isn't that something?
But I think that's where we're heading, is to table that and look at that avenue and see if that's something that more people can agree with.
And I don't know if we could discuss that tonight, since we already had the public hearing regarding
Right.
the section of code 405.050, definitions and interpretations. Although we didn't specifically address it during the public hearing, we did have a public hearing regarding changes in that section of code, or if I would need to separately advertise and have the public hearing next month, just to make sure everything
I would say that.
is per code. I mean, you don't have a crunch as far as a deadline or anything for getting, if it got tabled and represented next month, we're at the direction that we're trying to change the definition instead of the zoning grid.
As far as having a date crunch or anything, no, we don't, but
Just trying to
it's
resolve
getting
it.
ready to be spring,
Spring.
and people are gonna be traveling, and, I mean, right now, we've got snowbirds coming back north. Hopefully the snow is done, but, there might be people coming through then, and we just didn't wanna be sitting here and draw attention to the fact and have to refuse somebody in turmoil if they showed up. They want to come in and plug in to a 110 so they can run a space heater in their camper or the lights and watch a little TV. That's our biggest.
Could you invite them over to your house?
Pardon?
Could you invite them over to your house that night?
Oh, I guess I could.
Yeah, I don't think we can. I think we almost have to do a separate
I think
public
so, too.
hearing
And-
for that specific.
And we're only talking about April,
Yeah,
April
I-
3rd for our next
every
P&Z
option out on
meeting,
the
and
table.
April, what, 15th for the Board of Aldermen to hear it?
Yeah,
I think, so it'd be done just in time for taxes.
there you go.
Although, would it be helpful, Mr. Hanf, if that's the direction we are leaning, that we give at least some ballpark ideas of what kind of stipulations to put in the definition as far as,
It'd be extremely helpful, because I'm gonna be the one trying to create this definition, so if you guys have recommendations, it would be greatly appreciated.
so a time limitation would be one thing, whether it's 2 days or 2 months, or hopefully something a little less, but,
Water, I mean, electric only.
Yeah, no sewer, no
electric only,
gas.
no sewer. It seems to me like some limitation on the number of actual RVs and/or units on any single premise.
And certainly something about noise, because if this is going to be citywide, you don't want,
Yeah, no gas-powered generators. Because I'd be mad at you if you pulled up out in front of my house and started running a generator.
I guarantee you would be.
if I pull up outside of your house, I'll just plug in, use your electricity.
Since we're talking about the whole city, do we want to allow it on the streets in residential areas?
I think that's prohibited, but
I'm gonna opt back in now, since we're not specifically
Right,
talking
talk
about
about
the
that.
Elks. I think right now you can park in the street, you can't park in your driveway.
If it's a
With an
license,
RV?
if
You
it's a.
cannot park an RV in front of your house, if your driveway
that's
is in
right.
front of your house.
well, that ordinance stands on its own, right?
Can I park it in front of your? You
I
see, you can't park it
think-
in front of your house if your
Is-
driveway isn't, well, your driveway is gonna be in front of your house.
Is that why, to be honest with you, and I'm not being silly, but is that why people build an extra addition to their driveway to make it not in front of their house? Because a lot of times that's where I see people park there.
Isn't that right?
If it's a licensed vehicle, it can be parked in the street. You cannot have it plugged in, sitting out in the street.
But can you have it parked in your driveway in front of your house?
Go back to the-
I think as long as it's in your driveway, you can't. If it's in your yard, you cannot, because I had mine, because mine's too long to go in my driveway. I had it catty-cornered across my front yard when I got back from my last trip this year. And one of the code enforcement officers come by and questioned me about it, and I said, I'm cleaning it up, it'll be out at, the storage area tomorrow.
The exact language is, such vehicle may not be connected to utilities at the owner's property site are used as living quarters there, are parked in any required front yard. If it's on a driveway, I don't think that's considered your front yard. It's not supposed to be parked up in your front yard.
That's the way the code enforcement officer told me. He said, if you
And that's-
park it on your drive, you're okay, and I said, it's too long. It won't fit under the overhang on my garage, or I'd have it there.
I think I've got little pink tickets before, but maybe not. For having it parked in my driveway. So, I don't know.
So we have time limitation, electric only, no sewer, number of units limited, no gas powered generators.
No open fire?
Well, I think that's an existing
That's already,
ordinance
after
already.
dark.
Well, and some of,
All right, so I make a
That we table
motion
this?
that we table the consideration of this question for the amendment of the appendix, is that what it is? So that Mr. Hamp might draft changes to the definition in the code book regarding, what do we want to say? Recreational vehicles.
Vacation or recreation vehicles.
That's my motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Deitch, to table this Appendix A, amendment to Appendix A, and instruct Mr. Hamp to come up with a new definition. Under, what was it, which one? Definition of what?
Vacation or recreational vehicle.
Vacation and recreational vehicles. Any questions? Roll call vote?
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Jurgismeyer?
yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0 with 2 abstentions.
One further question. Could
Yes.
I volunteer to work with Jack on some of this? Because I've got a camper. If he doesn't, and he doesn't understand some of the workings on, just to throw some suggestions out there on the way other municipalities do it.
I'm sure
I mean, all I can do is
That'd be his
suggest.
call.
I'm sure any city employee would welcome anybody's opinion.
Absolutely. We've met already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've had good conversations.
Yeah, we've met about 3 or 4 times, so I can get my wording together on
Sure.
my application so that it'd be.
We appreciate your time.
I actually want to volunteer with Jack, too.
All right, Richie.
At this time, we'll close the meeting and ask Mr. Hamp if he has anything for the good of the group.
The only thing is to let you know, on the April 3rd meeting, we will have a site plan approval request for a seasonal haunted house operation, Extreme Terror Haunts, to be located at 1029 Armory Road, the old Ford dealership. They're wanting to do an indoor haunted house.
I thought that place was haunted already.
It might be.
Make it easier.
So that'll be something completely new and exciting for us to look at next month.
Anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
Don't forget Mr. Cole.
Oh, and we'd like to officially welcome back Mr. Kohler to the group.
Yes. Thank you, Richie.
By the way, this is my longest meeting ever.
I know. You come back for the first time and we stay here for and appreciate everyone's patience tonight and good discussion tonight. Good job, guys and gals. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Deitch, second by Mrs. Scott. All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Good night, have a good week.